introduce herself. So Christina, I am handing over to you.
Thank you. So my name is Christina Hanna, and today we'll be talking about how a Canadian micronutrient is helping with fulfilling some SDGs all over the world. So let's get right into it. All right. So first of all, my name is Christina Hanna. Like I said before, I'm also known as Tina. And I just graduated high school actually at a school called King's Christian Collegiate based in near Toronto, so in Canada. And I'm going to attend the University of Waterloo for nanotechnology engineering. And I'm really pleased to be talking about this topic. It's very close to home. I've actually been part of some of what's going on with this company as well. And let's get straight into what our objectives are for today. So firstly, we would like to understand the science behind the micronutrient and its functionality. So really, at first, we're going to talk about what is the science, what is it, and how does it work. Then we're going to view the correlation of this micronutrient in the context of wastewater management, which is a reoccurring debate all over the world. We kind of want to know how to deal with our waste, specifically regarding water purity and treatment. And then we'll be looking at some social impacts that this micronutrient has in connection with the fulfillment, or at least the amelioration of some of the goals. And lastly, a challenge to kind of understand and discover ways to think from a global citizenship and stewardship lens. So just to talk a little bit more about my experience with everything in regards to this topic, I was able to go to Kenya in 2018 with my school, King's Christian Collegiate, for a class, a World Issues class, a grade 12 credit. And through this experience, we were able to go visit many rural and urban areas and to see how do they deal with water treatment and purification. How do they deal with their waste? How do they deal with sludge or issues in the environment? What do they do? And so even behind me in that picture, we can see that there's the Nairobi River, which unfortunately it leads to many other rivers and ponds downstream. And so if it's contaminated, as a result, anything downstream will also be contaminated. So that is definitely something that they're looking into, and using this product might actually help with that. Then the next summer, I wrote a report about it, and I was really intrigued. And the company itself that supplies this micronutrient to remote areas such as Kenya is actually based locally here in Canada, so really close to where I live even. And I was fortunate enough and blessed enough to have the opportunity to intern for them for the summer and to kind of see their work in action, but also to kind of connect them with an organization that works very closely with the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Environments in Egypt, so that project can hopefully also affect their rural communities and by affect their country as well. And then after that, opportunities just kept coming. So I worked at McMaster while in high school this past year in another water contamination project. That one was more regarding mineral contamination. And then after that, I was able to take that project and previous projects to the science fair, to the national level as well. And opportunities just kept coming in from there. So here is a picture of me at Canada Wide last year. And then the other one is me in my basement because everything was closed, trying to still get the project to move forward. So this leads me into talking about Cycorp. That's where I interned, and that's where the micronutrient was developed so that it can be used in other areas such as Kenya and Rwanda in Bangladesh, and even American states, and even locally in Canada. So the aspect that I'll be focusing on is wastewater treatment, just like I've reiterated many times already. Specifically, the fact that this is one product, it's a micronutrient that allows for odor control. So if you've ever been to a landfill or to any area where sludge is not taken care of, or fecal matter and biologic matter is not disposed of properly, you'll find that odor is a huge issue. And again, who wants to live near an area that odor is out of control? No one does. So it's really helpful for that. It's also helpful for biosolid reduction, specifically if there's a huge rate coming in and not enough resources to take care of it, not enough land to take care of it all at once. Also, by translation, there's energy savings and performance improvements, which will be spoken about and inferred later on through the presentation. So now let's visualize together real quick. Imagine that you are faced with this river or this kind of body of water that is just pretty packed with sludge at the surface. As you can see, it's very difficult. It's not clear at all. It's very difficult to see what's at the bottom. So as you can probably imagine, the aerobic bacteria that naturally is supposed to kind of eat that fecal matter or whatever organic matter is found in this solution can't access the oxygen that it needs to be able to do its natural process naturally and efficiently. And often this is what is found when wastewater is not taken care of effectively, and when companies or surrounding areas just keep on spilling their effluent back into the source. As a result, you'll find aquatic life is just dying, and you'll find that it's very, very difficult for any improvement, because now you need to use heavy machinery to allow aeration to occur so that oxygen can then be reintroduced into the cycle, allowing for that bacteria to continue doing its process. So this is me kind of, at this point, I'll be talking specifically about this micronutrient. I know you may have questions because it is a very new concept, so please don't forget your questions. We'll be talking about that shortly, but this biologic SR2 serum, what it does is when you have a flock of bacteria, similar to this one right here, the aerobic bacteria will go on the outside because it wants access to oxygen. And specifically remembering from that picture that I showed you, oxygen in oxygen deficient environments, it's very difficult for that bacteria to be activated in the first place. But then it is also inhibiting the facultative anaerobic bacteria, which usually is found at the core of such a flock. And the difference between them both is that the aerobic bacteria needs oxygen. It absolutely needs an environment that is oxygen sufficient to survive and to complete its natural processes effectively. Whereas the facultative anaerobic bacteria can work in either an oxygen-rich or an oxygen deficient environment. So that is what we want to target, right? Because it doesn't need oxygen necessarily to work, but if you put it in an oxygenated environment, it can also work effectively. So what do we do when there's an aerobic layer all around it, inhibiting it from being activated? Well, what this micronutrient does is that it targets those bacteria, those facultative anaerobic bacteria at the center of the flock itself. And that allows them to then, by translation, start in the biodegradation process. If you have like that sludge, fecal matter, anything organic waste, you want to see that bacteria you can see that bacteria even under a microscope just engulfing that stuff right up. And so in other words, we can think of it as, in layman's term, this product is giving bacteria a multivitamin, mineral, and amino acid in the liquid form to allow the bacteria to begin digestion of solid waste after activation. So first thing is feeding it, making it kind of happy and healthy, giving it some some super strong muscles, for example, so that it can continue to biodegrade and decompose whatever is there much faster, which is helpful if you have a large body of water that is just fully contaminated. Another way to look at it is you're helping nature perform nature. So it gives resources to humans to allow this natural process to keep happening. Because think about it, some people, they'll think, okay, the solution is synthesizing a chemical that can then help for a certain amount of time until nature gets back on its feet and everything is sustainable again. But if you think about it, that's a quite flawed environmental model, because at the end of the day, nature already runs its course in a specific way, and you don't want to inhibit that. You don't want to end up adding some more chemicals that will have other effects in the long run. You want to really focus on just helping nature do nature in its own way. And so if we look at the biologic SR2 liquid in the form of an additive, a liquid additive, some important things to take note of is that it is completely plant-based. So again, as I was saying before, there's no chemical synthesis required. There's no there's no different aspects that are unnatural that are being added into your water. It's completely natural based, and it simulates existing bacteria population. Other people would be so tempted to add some bacteria cultures. Other organizations may think, okay, let's add some bacteria to allow for this biodegradation to happen faster. But if you think about it, there's already bacteria present. It's just a matter of activating it. Another thing that it does is that it inhibits sulfur-reducing bacteria. Sulfur-reducing bacteria breathe in sulfate, and then it produces some form of sulfide back, which is terrible for those ecosystems, but also from an industrial point of view. So if you want to, for example, use pipes or an aeration gadget to kind of simulate the water, that'll be very difficult, because that those reducing bacteria may actually damage your pipes, may damage whatever machinery you use, while also inhibiting the environment from maintaining good health. The cool thing about this, or the neat thing about this biologic serum, is that it can work in a very big range of locations and plant sizes and a whole bunch of different places. So right now they have a few, like I said before, that they're working in some American states, some Canadian regions, but also in Kenya, in Rohingya, Bangladesh, and even Egypt. And the possibilities are just quite infinite. So other things that helped is that it helps with eliminating odor. Like I said before, it reduces oxygen demand, because often we need oxygen to help these aerobic bacteria to function. And it also reduces biosolid formation and operating costs by translation. I know this part is pretty nitty-gritty in the scientific, but then when we talk about the social impacts, everything will really click and come close together. So if you look at these graphs, if you think about the control and you think about how this micronutrient is affected, you can see that there's an increase of 650% of aerobic bacteria respiration rate. So it's able to function and keep on working, even though may not be much oxygen in that area that is available due to sludge that is just completely covering the surface of the water. Anaerobic bacteria is also able to have a higher respiration rate by 560%, which is good, because that is what we're targeting, the facultative anaerobic bacteria. And then the plus side is that the sulfur-reducing bacteria is also reduced by 95%, which is really good for this cause. So once more, now thinking about it in the wastewater treatment context, you'll find that there's a decrease in dissolved oxygen demand. So that's what people often say, that they need to aerate the area first, which obviously will help, but the demand has been decreased now by couple percent, which is really helpful if you think about it, because money is opportunity. And I'm going to say that many times. Money allows for access to resources, and you don't want to be putting it all into into energy demand or into, yes, something like aeration. It also reduces biomass yield, sludge volume, eliminates those odors that we were talking about, and improves the effluent quality. Because again, if you're reintroducing that water into the source, you want to make sure that the quality is close to the original, even better if you can, just so that those ecosystems will not be affected. And nitrification, again, is improved as well. So you may be wondering at this point, what was the point of talking about all of that? Great question. This is just to give you some more context, specifically with Kenya, where I went and experienced this topic. But again, I've also been to the Dominican Republic and Egypt, and I've seen the effect of the wastewater and how it affects rural communities socially, environmentally, and as a result also affects the country, the community, the continent, and the world as a whole. But looking into the Kenyan context, the World Wildlife Foundation says that water pollution is one of the most serious ecological threats we face today. And the Water Association backs that up by saying that 59% of 46 million Kenyans are victims of inaccessibility to clean water. That is a huge ratio. It's more than half of the population. And then lastly, Waterloo Science Department kind of talks about how to make sure that you are properly treating water, you want to know that the water is suitable for its application and returning to its natural state. If it's not suitable for its natural state, then that's not proper treatment. And often when people say they're treating water and companies are bringing them back into the system, they are not eligible under this definition. So let's talk about it. I want you to, if you're able to, close your eyes or just visualize real quick with me this scenario. You're a 12-year-old female who is attending a school in a rural area, okay? Naturally, you will feel the need to use the bathroom. Naturally, at some point in the day, right? Now you have 3 options. Now listen to these options carefully. 1, you can hold it in, which is not healthy at all, but you can hold it in, even though the day is long and you probably will have to walk a few kilometers or miles back home. But the first option is that you hold it in. The second option is that if you look at the screen here, as depicted on the screen, you use the pit latrine. And let me be very honest, those are quite nasty. They are very disgusting. There is vector insects all around that, I'm sorry, but for lack of better words, they may bite you in the butt, for rhetorically, metaphorically, and figuratively, but also quite literally. They may actually bite you, and they often carry disease. Also, this area in general is unsanitary, and the odor is just quite absurd. So imagine like the worst smell that you've ever smelt and just multiply that by 20. It's pretty bad. And often there's fecal matter. So in other words, like whatever is defecated, often it's overflowing and it just surrounds that area. And often, yeah, like the pit latrine capacity has already been fulfilled and there's still more overflow out of that. Now think about how dehumanizing that experience may feel. It's like you're going to the washroom in the midst of some washroom already there, right? It's not that nice. That's option number 2, that you use the pit latrine. And option number 3 is open defecation. So that's your bush toilet. So imagine you see a field nearby. Often that will be way more sanitary than using the pit latrine itself. And what people will, or young females, especially if they're on their menstrual cycle, what they'll often do is that they'll go and they'll openly defecate, but that leads them susceptible to many diseases and also scenarios of rape, for example, and just a lot of dangers that, and in such an area, if you're raped, there may be risk of STDs, HIV, AIDS, other things that may also be introduced. So think of option 1 is to hold it in, which is probably very painful. Option 2 is to use the pit latrine. And option 3 is to openly defecate. So please write your choice and why in the chat, and we will talk about it. So I'll give you like 30 seconds to a minute. I see some good questions in the chat. Many people are saying 3, open defecation. Yeah, that's often what people go for, but skip meals during the day. Yeah. Option 1, which is hold it in, that might be painful, but yeah, I hear you on that. Yeah, I think option 3 is the most common. Option 3 and 1 is what I'm hearing a lot. No one wants to use the pit latrine. I feel like that's often the common mindset that those children in those rural communities have as well, specifically regarding this issue. But again, think about it. If you're a female, it's specifically dangerous because rape is a huge thing in such communities. And what 12-year-old wants to be susceptible to that, right? So let's go back. So often what will actually happen is option number 4. I know that I didn't talk about it, but what kids will do is that they will choose to stay at home. They will not return to school just to avoid the situation altogether, because it is quite dehumanizing and it can be painful, it can be uncomfortable, and it can also be dangerous. So often what will happen is that children will, especially young females, will choose not to go to school at all. And obviously, you know that if there is an issue of poverty, the biggest thing that can help one of the biggest resources that can help alleviate poverty is education. And so if people don't have access to education and are choosing not to use it because of something as specific as trying to think, how will I use the washroom throughout the day, that is quite unfortunate. So now let's think about Pungusa itself. That's how it's locally marketed in Kenya. So it's that company, what they do is that they take that micronutrient and they're not a nonprofit. They aren't a nonprofit, but they are kingdom-based. So if there's a place in need, such as a rural community in Kenya, for example, or Rohingya, the refugee camps in Rohingya, Bangladesh, what they will do is that they will partner with either a local organism or someone who is very close to the rural, to that area, to the rural community. And what they will do is that they will supply that product based on what the person, that spokesperson says that they need. This is how much we need. This is how much the people can be expected to pay for it, and so forth and so on. So in a way, if I saw that someone was asking in the chat, how can this micronutrient help with poverty? Well, you're creating a local job market, right? So you're allowing people now to take this, to sell it locally, and in turn, it's helping with your wastewater management problems, with the lifespan of your pit latrine. You're helping with many different aspects while creating jobs in the local market. And you're not giving them freebies. You're not giving this product for free, because if you do that, you might be competing with other like similar businesses in the local community. That's not what we want. What we want is obviously to create a job market in the first place. And when that job market is created in the local community, in the rural community, then that affects the urban community, which affects then the province, the state, or the country, then affects the continent, and affects the world by translation, right? Another thing is that it helps with wastewater management, which we've been talking about over and over again. It also helps alleviate some of the barriers to things like education, right? The scenario that we're talking about, that I asked you to imagine, it's not only a scenario that is rhetorical or something that is to be thought of. It is something that is really being found and being experienced today by children in those communities. They find that finally they have access to education, but hey, here's another barrier. Also, reducing energy needed. So often you'll need people to come and to empty those latrines, which can often be costly and also not accessible most of the time. But why not use that cost that would go into maintenance, or that energy that would be used? Instead, we can use that money towards helping more children go to school, towards helping local businesses thrive and flourish, towards helping for so many things, access to healthcare, access to like food, resources, all that type of stuff. And at the end of the day, you're also increasing the latrine lifespan. as you're taking care of that effluent regularly. Because once you put that micronutrient into the pit latrines, just like it's marketed on this, for pit latrines marketed on this picture right here, then you're allowing for the reduction of solid waste as the bacteria that is already found in there. That's important. You're not adding bacteria, you're giving a micronutrient for the bacteria to then be able to decompose that solid waste even faster. You're also allowing for greater equality in access to necessities and resources for greater quality of life among the females and males as well, among age groups, among people. And at the end of the day, you're helping also indirectly maybe to preserve life below water. So if that Nairobi River, for example, that I showed you at the beginning, if we do end up having that project in effect, then for sure that natural life will be able to thrive. For sure those animals and those birds and anything that was kind of shooed away from that area because of the effects will be able to come back. So yeah, make sure to add your thoughts in the chat. How else can you think that this micronutrient can help? What else do you think that something so simple like this small business opportunity, how else can you imagine it helping those communities and the people as a whole? So another thing is Anya Osorin, who is actually the person who works closely with those communities in Kenya, and she's the one who basically is in charge of when they send over the micronutrient. She basically takes that in and she kind of helps those communities, and in those projects she's very much involved with all that stuff. She said that this product has saved the lives of many, especially since a child dies every 15 minutes from lack of sanitation. Take that in. One child dies every 15 minutes. That's quite tragic, and those rates are not going down. If anything, they're either going up or they're the same, and that's quite unfortunate. So now if we think about these SDGs, it was one simple product that I spoke about, but let's think about how many SDGs this can help. It helps with no poverty. We've already spoken about it. It creates that local market, and it allows these people to imagine you have a field, first of all, like agricultural field near that body of water. For sure it's going to be contaminated. For sure it's going to be you won't be able to grow anything. So it even helps with them to keep maintaining any other local businesses that they had. So it really is definitely a helpful aspect there. It also may help indirectly with good health and well-being by kind of eliminating that risk, that risk of being exposed to any disease through vector insects, through rape, whatever it may be. Quality education. Well, now you're allowing people to have access to education, first of all, but now the education quality may be increased because instead of using that money towards controlling fecal matter that is disposed into these pit latrines, you can use that towards allowing more children to have access to education, and also towards more resources for them as well. Also, I can see clean water and sanitation, decent work and economic growth, reduced inequality among the genders, and so on and so forth, life below water. So the challenge here is, I'll talk about it shortly, but the idea is that now that we have examples of this project in effect today through the Nairobi River, like I spoke about before, that's their hopes for the future and project that they're looking at. The Ruwenga refugee camps, they actually had a 7-acre lake system that was black water and gray water. So black water is basically like fecal matter, like whatever comes out of the washroom, and gray water is like what comes out of your sink and the shower and what you use to cook, all that stuff. And they only have water accessible every 3 to 5 days. But now that 7-acre lake system is completely clear, they found that birds are coming back, fish can now survive, they can use that water for any gray water purposes like shower and using it to cook too. And they're finding it to be helpful. And also they're introducing this micronutrient to communities for business opportunity and for grade schools, for pit latrines. So like I was saying before, you truly want to allow humans to help nature fulfill its course at a quicker and more effective manner. And like I was kind of hinting on before, we should think, how can we think of ways that we can allow our projects to have such a big impact? Even something as simple as a developed micronutrient that was actually developed by someone who went to Waterloo, which I'm really excited about that I'll be there too. But something even that may have such a huge impact could have had a humble beginning. So for global citizenship and stewardship, which this project is such a good example of, I would recommend the first thing is listen to what's happening in your community, listen to what's happening in the global community, listen to what is needed, listen to what people need. Sometimes we feel tempted to give generously, which is not a bad thing. Sometimes we give things that can actually inhibit development and growth, that can actually inhibit those rural areas from growing and from really developing and coming out of the cycle of poverty. Another thing I would say is be locally and globally informed. How do my issues in my local community relate to the ones that are in the global community, and vice versa? How are the issues in the global community related to me and my life? If you see someone that can't access even clean water, like how can that relate to your life? How do you feel about that? What can you do about that? I would also say, think about how you can make the world a better place with a wholesome lens. Look at it from a mental health perspective. Look at it from a poverty perspective, from a ecological perspective. Let's try to stray away from an anthropocentric view, which is very human based. Let's look at it from a very wholesome view. How does it affect the environment, the ecosystems, the existing people there, the communities? Culturally, are you affecting the culture and the religion? How are your actions doing, and how do they affect? Allow your knowledge to turn into empathy, and allow that empathy to turn into action by translation. Often we have empathy and we want to give generously, and a very common saying is that the road to hell is paved by good intentions. You may have good intentions, but at the end of the day, if you're not listening to see what is the need, how can I help this area to be self-sustaining, then what's the point? Which leads me to my last point. You know you're on the right track if you're helping people who can then help other people, because that means that self-sustenance has been achieved and they can also help their communities by translation. I like to always remember that where there is a need, there is a business opportunity waiting to happen, and you can jump on that, and you can help worldwide, and you can think in a very global stewardship and global citizenship point of view. So now I'm wondering if there are any questions, and if you do, feel free to just open either use a chat setting or open your camera and your speaker and just, go right for it. Okay. All right, so I hear someone asking about eutrophication, and that is a process where there is runoff that comes. Let's say you have a field and you have animals that are defecating nearby, and then that goes into the system, and as a result, you have algae growth, for example, or you have, the growth of certain bio plants that actually cover the surface of the water, and then as a result you don't have any oxygen that is allowing for any other aquatic organisms to survive, to breathe, and to partake in photosynthesis? So that's a great question. And I would say, if you're thinking about it, I don't think eutrophication would be worse, because what happens in eutrophication is the fecal matter is introduced into the system, but there is no there's no bacteria activity, or there's not much bacteria activity to get rid of that that fecal matter. So the issue is the fecal matter is feeding feeding that algae, or is feeding those whatever organism feeds upon it. So what you want to do is eliminate that organic matter from the reserve as a whole, so that it doesn't create the eutrophication effect. But good question.
Right, thank you. I think I got it.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Any resources, links to join? Yeah, I would say, like, even if you check, like, you can search it up, Pungusa, or even Cycorp, the company itself, you can see how it can be of use in your community and how you can apply it or get involved. And I'm sure there's other organizations that may be interested in partnering with them. How can we use micronutrients to reduce poverty? So a good way to use micronutrients to reduce poverty, as we said a few times now, but it's okay, I think, to make it more clear, it's the idea that you are creating a local market. So we have an issue in these regions that they don't have effective resources to deal with wastewater and to manage that, and therefore that's an issue where they have to use whatever little money or resources they have into helping that cleaning that out. And usually that means paying for urban communities or urban services to come in. But when you have this micronutrient, then you are able to actually pay local associates, other people who live in that rural region that are working closely with this project. And as a result, you're able to help nature, complete nature, and in a way, you're reducing that issue with the fecal matter and wastewater problem, while regenerating income into your own community rather than sending money out. I'm not sure if that makes sense, if that's clear. Producing micronutrient is expensive, as some poor countries might not afford it. How can we produce micronutrients that will be affordable for everyone? Yeah, so as I said before, I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but great question. It's that this company is kingdom based, so, or at least they call themselves kingdom based. So what it means is they will ask someone who is working close, like an associate or an expert or a specialist who is working close with these communities, and we'll ask them, what can these people afford, and what is the need, what do they need? And then this associate will kind of examine the situation, and they will tell them, this is how much the general income is, this is what can be afforded. And this company will then try to use a concentration that allows for that price to be met, but also be effective in those environments. So we definitely have to think, since it's an all natural micronutrient, it's actually not, it's not as expensive as you would think it is. It's definitely the application process, though, that needs dedication and education to make sure you're using it effectively. How could we, world leaders, positively contribute to the movement of purifying these rivers and other bodies of water in these rural areas, both in our countries as well as others? So I feel like the biggest part is listening, to kind of see what is the need, what is the source of these bodies of water being contaminated in the first place. So often it will be an urban, like these people don't even have access to their own ponds. Often it will be like an urban company that is kind of just putting its effluent into a rural area, and there's no one who can say anything, because, like, again, if you are in an impoverished area or in a more rural area that's further away from where anyone of political or authority or anyone of say can talk about it, then you really don't have a choice but to accept it. So I feel like leaders have to advocate for these communities, that that people, we can't just be throwing away our effluent into their lands, into their rivers, into their bodies of water. We have to really be strong about this, even though it might benefit us. But how can it benefit them and in long term also benefit us? Because if they have a healthy community, then you have a healthy you have a healthy region, and if you have a healthy region, you have a healthy country, and so on and so forth. Oh, these micronutrients are pretty effective. I'm not sure if you saw before, and I hear that this will be posted on, this may be posted on YouTube later on, but I had at the beginning some of the graphs or statistics that kind of show how effective these were, and they were found to be quite, I would say, quite good. They were found to be really good. 506% increase in activity for the facultative anaerobic bacteria, and about 600 something for the aerobic bacteria. For the micronutrient idea about how it can be a bad thing, since it's completely natural, and also it was really important for them to put assessments in the toxology labs as well. They found that it is very healthy and not toxic. Actually, when I was at the internship, this is kind of funny, but my supervisor said that he actually tried drinking it once to prove that it is not toxic, and that people, obviously it doesn't taste good and like wouldn't be recommended, but he even drank it to prove that it's fine. So that's a good question, definitely a good concern, and a lot of tests have been put into it to make sure that it does not affect people in such a way. Well, the micronutrient only helps for the question about if it's dangerous for natural cycles. It helps nature do nature. So in a way, you're helping, so you're giving humans a resource that will allow nature to fulfill its natural course quicker. That's basically what it is. So in the long term, it won't be not dangerous for natural cycles. In fact, you're helping the natural cycles, if that kind of makes sense.
We have a participant raising their hand to ask a question. So
oh, yeah,
I'll go and Muhammad, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, so I had a question regarding fiber membrane and the thing which is used in Lifestraw. Don't you think that would be more effective?
Well, the Lifestraw is used for your own consumption, right? So let's say you have a pond, like water, and you want to drink water, you're going to use the Lifestraw, right? But that's not solving the issue. The issue is that that whole body of water is contaminated. And again, like maybe from a more anthropocentric view, like a more human-based view, yes, you are allowing people access to water through the Lifestraw, which I actually, when I was in Kenya, I looked at that as well. But then what about the ecosystem there? If that's affected, then the cycle will never end. The water will keep being contaminated. In a way, you want that water to be, you want that problem to be solved. You want, like for a pit latrine, for example, where there's sludge, like there's fecal matter in the pit latrine, you want to help get the lifespan of the pit latrine to stay for longer, right? The Lifestraw couldn't be used in that setting, for example. It could be used for consumption only, but this micronutrient is multi-purpose. It helps also with allowing for decomposition of that matter so that it could have a long-term effect. Did that answer your question, or is there a follow-up?
Yes, it did.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Oh,
We don't have, I don't think we have any more questions. Oh, there's one from Vedant. Any suggested internships?
Yeah, so I would suggest that if you, if you look nearby, first of all, look at an issue that you are passionate about. And honestly, I think what people are afraid of is reaching out. But if you reach out and you show that you have a passion, often some people will want to encourage students. For example, I reached out to McMaster University and to Waterloo and to UFT, and McMaster ended up responding. So I think just give it a shot, especially universities nearby. Often they want students to help in like projects, and they want your input as well. So I would just say go for it. If you have something that you're passionate about, do your research and reach out. And because again, like each internship will be specific to what your interests are, right? So in the science field, I would say universities are good. Like firms, chemical engineering firm, that's where I was, a chemical engineering firm, any other firm really, just make sure you reach out and you show that interest and you're proactive about it. Like I said, hey, I'm in the science fair, I went to nationals, and I also went to, if you have the opportunity, try to travel or at least go visit a local area that you see that there's an issue that you're passionate about. They said, yeah, like I went to Egypt and Kenya and Dominican, and this is something I'm passionate about. But even if not, then go visit your local wastewater management treatment center. Go visit locally wherever you can and show that you have that interest.
All right, great. Amazing presentation, really loved it. A lot of information given. Thank you, Christina, for participating in the summit. I hope everyone enjoyed and learned a lot from this. So yeah, since our time is up, let us conclude this session. A big thanks to Tina. All right. So everyone have a great global summit ahead. Thank you for participating, and do visit our help desk if you have any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your summit. Thank you for your time.